Hi, everybody. How are you doing? Happy Friday. All right, I have an amazing guest today, Alex, who is a PR phenomenon, music executive, just killing it out in LA. And I'm about to bring her on because we start this show on time, y'all. So here we go. I'm so excited to introduce her to you guys. You guys are going to love, love, love her. All right, we are connecting.
Hi.
What is going on?
Nothing. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It feels good to talk to you.
I know. I feel like you're so far away all the time. It sucks.
No, you're so far, but so close. Shout out to everybody in here. Hey, Nicole. But I am so excited to have you on the second episode of the Woman Who Roar series. You know, when I was putting together this series, I was like, okay, who do I know that, of course, is badass? That is a but who else do I know that's working on interesting things, that has some good perspective to bring to the audience, and is just an all-around dope person? And you definitely fit that category. And I want to get right into business. So first things first, how is LA?
LA's good. Honestly, I don't think it's as bad as you guys have it on the East Coast right now. I'm sure we'll get another wave of our situation. The only thing I wish is I wish more people would stay at home here. There's still quite a few people out and about that probably don't need to be. But other than that, it's good. How's New York and Jersey?
We're on complete lockdown. So when I see, you know, folks on their IG hanging out at the Bay, out in County, I'm like, they're really pushing it right now.
They are, though.
Really,
they
really
are
pushing it,
it's
which
so
is
annoying.
not cool.
No.
But I wanted to, so listen, I need you to make sure you hollering at everybody who's not practicing social distancing.
Yes.
There. Because, man, listen, we need to be on top of each other right now because
it's
we're
the
just
worst.
taking it way too lightly. All right, let me take a sip of this water, guys. This is water in a wine glass. Earlier today, I was on a webinar and I was speaking to some corporate folks and telling them kind of how to cope with it. And this is one of the ways I'm coping, like putting water in a wine glass and making it, you know?
Girl, get fancy. I'm here for it. I'm sipping my energy drink.
Okay. So I want to talk about so many things with you. So talk about how you went from New York and completely shipped yourself out into Cali, why you did that, and how life has been since you made that major transition.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I made a lot of transitions. I mean, I went to college in Washington State, so my transitions have happened to multiple cities. I would say the start of my career, though, really happened in Las Vegas. So I went there for a job, and from there as a coordinator. So I was a marketing coordinator. I was working with Mayweather, and you know, I thought I had made it. You know, he's the biggest boxer. Right. Like I'm thinking, like I'm doing big things.
You was on the money team. You was on
like who doesn't want that? I quickly found out it's a lot of work, a lot of overtime, a lot of hours. But it was that first year was just a great learning curve. You know, it was like a crash course in marketing, PR, crisis management, nightlife, all of the above, sports. So I think that was amazing, and I'm very grateful that they gave me that opportunity.
Yeah.
But from there, then it was kind of on me to figure out who's who in this city, who do I need to know, where do I need to be at to grow my career, and that's kind of where I delve into the event side of things and nightlife and things like that. And I really use it to my advantage. You know, I know a lot of people are in the nightlife industry, and shout out to them because I think they are one of the hardest hit industries right now when it comes to this. So bartenders and promoters, I feel for you. But I used it to my advantage, you know, not to party and kick it, but to really figure out, you know, who's making these moves in this city. And from there, I was able to grow into a position to do PR for the largest communications firm out there in Nevada. So that's kind of where I got my start in this. And what transitioned me out to LA, it was actually, honestly, I was tempted to go back to New York or do LA. And I felt like it was just the easier move. So, and everyone from New York was telling me the music industry was shifting to LA at the time. So I felt like the pressure was in LA. So that's how I transitioned out there through another firm to do music PR. And honestly, I had transitioned so many times in my life personally and professionally that it made it a little bit easier for me. But I think the biggest thing that I had to force myself to do, remind myself to do, especially when I didn't want to, was to go out, to go network, and to be in as many places as you can be, at least when you first start, because you never know who you're, especially in big cities like where you are in New York and in LA, you never know who you're going to run into. You never know who you're going to meet.
Right.
So that for me was the biggest motivator, but also something that I did struggle with. You know, I do like my alone time. I do like to relax. But at the start of your career, you just can't. You really have to be out there.
So you made a couple of moves, like went from one big city to another big city by yourself. And I know for a lot of folks, that's super scary and something that they probably wouldn't do. So what kept you going? What made you so brave to kind of just pick up and go from city to city until you found your home?
Yeah. I mean, I won't lie. I have to shout out my mom to that, because she had moved us a lot, and for good reasons, moved us a lot when I was younger. So making new friends, doing things, that was a norm for me. And I know for a lot of people, that's not a norm. I think the best advice I can give is just to do it. That's the hardest part. I mean, I just did it with my grandma, who's almost 80, never left Washington State in her life, never left really the vicinity of the little city that she was in from high school on. And we just moved her to Las Vegas in February. And at almost 80, that's really hard. You know what I mean? You're not out and about making friends, you're retired. But now she's loving it. You know what I mean? So if an 80-year-old something woman can do it and find peace in it and enjoy it, I think the biggest thing is just to make the move. Because once you get to a city, you don't really have a choice. You know what I mean? Like, you have to pay your bills. You have to make friends. It forces you to do things that are not comfortable for you. So it's just getting to the point of actually doing it and moving. And I know for a lot of people, that's really hard, especially in New York. I don't know how many New Yorkers I know that have never left their borough. You know what I mean? So like, they don't leave, you know? So I have an auntie that's never left Brooklyn for forever. So I know it's hard, but just make that move. Because once you do that, the other things start to fall into place in a line, because that's just life. You have to keep going at that point.
Yeah. So how do you even know you wanted to do PR? Like, how did you know that was an interest of yours? And when did you realize you can make money doing it?
Can you hear me? Sorry, it cut out a little bit.
Yeah, now I can hear you. My question was, how did you know that you wanted to do PR? And then at what point did you realize you can actually make money in PR?
I fell into PR, to be honest. I was in college. I was in the communications field. Yeah, that part too. A lot of people don't know what it is. I was in the communications department, and I thought I was going to be a journalist, and I thought that that's where my career was going, either music journalism or sports journalism. That's what I was into. I quickly realized that was not the gig for me. I loved writing, but the deadlines, writing 10 to 15 stories a week, you know, doing all these interviews, that just wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. But at that point, I had made so many credits in the field that I couldn't. I mean, if I had switched, I would have been in college for like another 2 years, and I didn't want to do that. So I went to my advisor, and I was like, what other major can I do in this field that's not necessarily writing? And she gave me, there's a couple of like producing, radio, and that wasn't really my thing either. And then she said public relations. And when she broke it down to me, I felt like it was something I was already doing on campus anyway. I was coordinating events. I was coordinating not necessarily media, but like people to come out and cover it just in general, for their own personal reasons. I was in a bunch of different groups and connecting people together. So I felt like I was already doing a lot of those things. Now it was just kind of doing the educational part of it, which, I'll be honest, if you are in a major of PR that doesn't require you to be active and out in internships for at least half of your major, then don't do their program, because you can't do PR from the classroom. You can learn to write a press release, you can learn to do that, but you can't learn how to network, how to meet people, how to get contacts. That's all in the field. So internships is the best way. But yeah, so that's how I fell into it. And honestly, I went from the internships into into my job almost immediately. I was doing marketing, but those cross over often, especially now. But that's kind of how I fell into it. And then where I knew I could make money was when I got to Las Vegas. And I will say Vegas has it's a small but mighty team of publicists that run that city. And they do a lot. They do a lot of events, a lot of major events. So that's where I knew, okay, this is like a real thing. Like it's a real career. People are really doing it. They're, it's big time. You're getting national news coverage, coming into the city, or you're flying out of the city to do it. So that's kind of where the light bulb went off that this was a real thing.
So what is your fondest memory so far in your career, whether it was like a super like cool client you got to work with, or something you got to do being in the PR space? Because depending on what type of PR you do find yourself in rooms that you probably wouldn't be in unless you were an artist yourself, or unless you were the person who needs PR themselves. But because you are PR, you are critical to their entire campaign. So what is your fondest memory so far?
That's hard. I mean, shout out to all my clients. I love them all individually for individual reasons.
Right. You don't want to single anybody.
There's not a favorite. Honestly, I've been blessed I think the event side is where I was blessed to work with so many different people at one time, as opposed to just one individual client. So the two that stick out the most are Cirque du Soleil was a client, and we opened Michael Jackson 1. And that was amazing. I got to work with this was after he had passed, but I got to work with the estate of Michael Jackson. I got to meet and work with the family. So that was, and then everybody wanted to come out to that. So we had Spike Lee, the family, all the Jackson brothers, his kids. Everybody came out to show love for Pharrell. He performed at the after party. So we had a lot of amazing people in the building that night. So that one stuck out a lot. And then the other one that I worked on was I was working for the Cleveland Clinic. And every year they host the Keep Memory Alive Gala, which is star-studded. I mean, you have in the building Quincy Jones. We had, who else did we have? We had Stevie Wonder, Sharon Stone. I mean, we had everybody that comes out, Cindy Crawford and her husband, so everybody comes in from Hollywood for that event. To support. So that one, the last year I did it, we were honoring Gloria Estefan. So that was a big moment, being Latina, watching her get the honor. Yeah. So those two probably stick out the most.
Yeah. So I might put you on the spot a little bit here, but I'm really curious to know, like, what do you love about the public relations space, and what can you do without in the public relations space?
Ooh, that's a good question. I love how it's always evolving. So even right now, especially right now with what we're going through, a lot of people think that, maybe our field is not as strong because everything's Corona based right now, but it's actually, it's all just switching to what we're doing right now. We're doing live interviews, we're doing things like that. So I just love how it's always evolving, because I feel like we're either on the trend or we're a little bit ahead of the trend when it comes to the new wave. So for me, I love that because that keeps it exciting. It keeps it interesting. One thing I could do without. Probably the egos. There's a lot of egos, both within, the PR field, meaning the publicists, but also the teams that we work with, On my side, I do deal with a lot of talent, managers, agents, and some are amazing, and some of them are my closest friends, and some are extremely difficult to work with. So dealing with all those personalities, at the end of the day, we're all trying to get the same job done. So I just don't see the need for the ego when we all want to see each other. We're all on the same team. We want to see each other win. So that can make it extremely difficult when certain people's egos get in the way of getting the job done.
Yeah, definitely. And I can totally see how that can happen.
Yeah.
How do you, because there's a lot of publicists and there's a lot of good people that do the work. So how do you kind of separate yourself? Like, if you could give advice to people who are interested in entering the PR space, who are even maybe thinking of hiring a publicist themselves, like, how do you differentiate yourselves? How do you really show potential clients that they should work with you over somebody else?
Yeah. I think it's a relationship at the end of the day. I, I would be hard pressed. I mean, if you're dealing with good publicists or a good agent business. So I don't see anybody having more contacts than the other. But I think it's your relationship with your publicist. You know, you got to think about them almost the same way you think about your relationship with your attorney or your manager or your agent. You know, that's your core team of building your business and your brand. So, you know, you have to be able to relate to them. You have to be able to trust in them as a human being first before you can trust them with your business and your money. So I think it's super important to spend time with whoever you decide to choose. Take a couple meetings, and not just a meeting about, you know, the logistics and the business, but a meeting of like getting to know each other. You know, it's almost like, honestly, anytime I go meet with a potential new client, it's almost like a first date, honestly. It's, you know, who are you? What are you about? What are you trying to do? And that goes both ways. I don't like taking on clients that I don't believe in their messages, you know, and their mission and what they're trying to do. So if I don't believe in it, I can't go out there and help you spread your message the way that I'm supposed to as a publicist. So it's just as important for me to understand and align morally with what you're doing as it is for me as well. And I think that will help you separate, you know, who you should work with and who you shouldn't.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you have the publicist hustle, but I've also seen you get really active in the cannabis industry. So
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing in that space? What's happening there? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. It was a space that through networking and friends that had already started in that space that they had fallen into. And to be honest, I was meeting up with them from a PR standpoint, but then I got just super interested in it overall. I think that cannabis from a stigma standpoint has gotten a really bad rap. I personally think that it's great from a health and wellness standpoint. You know, there's definitely a difference between people using it for health and wellness as opposed to maybe like the stoner age that we saw back in the 90s and things like that. It's very much changed. It's very much helped people and their ailments and their mental health. So I loved the message that it was bringing out for us. So that's how I started getting into it. But anytime I get into a new industry, and this goes for PR to music to entertainment, I like to learn a little bit of everything. So I don't like to just know my part in it and call it a day, because I just feel like you should know a little bit of everything, because that makes you more valuable, either as a person or as a client or whatever the case is. So I actually partnered with somebody that was in the growing space. And for a year, I learned from the seed all the way up to the actual pulling down of the plant and distributing it to the different dispensaries, how that whole process works. So that was kind of my first start into it. And now from there, I've been able to then shift into the marketing and branding side of it. But I feel like it's a growing industry. It's still a wild, wild west industry. So even if you go into it from a PR and marketing standpoint, there's still a lot of challenges and a lot of rules that are in place that make it a little bit difficult. But honestly, if I was getting into the PR industry today, that would probably be one of the industries I would go into, because it's not as tapped as, let's say, entertainment or music. There's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of good that comes out of it from a health and wellness standpoint. So I highly recommend that industry if you haven't looked into it.
So for somebody who, and shout out to everybody that's in there, we see you. Thank you for the
Yes.
comment. For somebody who is thinking about penetrating the space, where should they start?
Well, that's a good question. I think just honestly, these brands are very interactive. So I would do a lot of research. There's a lot of articles online, but I would start with, you know, figuring out who the kind of big players are in the game from a branding standpoint. And then on the flip side, I would go and figure out, because each state, each city is different. So whatever city, state you're in, I would then go to and see where cannabis stands in your industry. Because if it's not there yet, that might make it a little bit more difficult. If you're only medicinal, that's another challenge. So then it becomes a matter of what can you really do where you're at, depending on, you know, what what part of the industry you can infiltrate, but see who the power players are. See what people are doing. There's a guy named Jason Washington who I look to for a lot of advice. He's up in the Bay Area, and he's been in the industry for a very long time, and he's a great source of knowledge. So I would follow him. There's Green Entrepreneur, where they kind of give you the latest and greatest entrepreneurs in the space. There's Women in Cannabis that, give all the women that are in this space, and especially women, they get a lot of credit when they do infiltrate this space. So if you're a woman, it's a great place to grow your career because they're very supportive of women in cannabis. So that's where I would start. And then you can kind of just find your niche as it grows. But like I said, it's still a very uncertain industry in terms of where it's going to go. It's here and it's here to stay, but what happens to it, it's kind of an uncertain situation right now.
Yeah. So basically educate yourself.
For sure.
And kind of, what's the laws in your state, in your city as it relates to it. But definitely want to pursue it as a possible investment because the industry is booming and it isn't going anywhere. And it's just a matter of time before it's legalized. So you've got the Publicist stuff, you've got the cannabis, and what are you doing exactly in the music and entertainment space? How are you playing in that space?
Yeah, so always on the PR marketing side, that's a space I've always been in. And so that's kind of how people know me from the label standpoint. But I would say recently I've decided to get back into the music management space. I did it a little bit in Las Vegas, but I took a break from it when I made the transition out here to kind of get my grounding in LA. But I'm playing back in it again. I'm blessed to know some of the top amazing ARs and all the labels. So we've kind of talked and done, some back and forth about where the music space stands and what they're looking for in artists right now. So I'm kind of playing with that, listening to a lot of new music. So if you are an artist, please send it my way. I am listening a lot right now to decide which artists I want to work with. I would love to get a Latin artist. So if you are a Latin artist, please send me stuff.
I'm interviewing Chachi at 6:00.
Yes, tell her I'm going to hop in there. But I do because, we're still underrepresented in so many ways on the label side. They put us kind of in that box, like, oh, you're a Latin artist, so you're over here. It's not the case anymore. I don't know how many crossovers do we have to have before it's like, okay, we're in the music space in general. We don't need to be Latin billboards, Latin Grammys. Like, no, we're just artists. So that's something I want to work with and grow with on one of these artists. But I'm looking for all genres. And I think that that's a misconception, is that people think that based on what you listen to, that's the artist you're looking for when you're doing this from a management and AR side. I listen to everything. I've listened to country artists, singer-songwriters, pop artists, Latin artists, urban. So, it's more about, are you a good artist is what we care about. So that's what I'm looking for right now, because with some of these labels, they're heavily looking for new artists. So I'm looking to get a couple people signed by the end of this year.
Ooh, okay. So given that we're in this kind of state of quarantine, what are some innovative ways you think artists should send stuff to you? Because I think there are so many aspiring artists and so many creatives who are trying to get their name out there. And I just feel like if they give some thought into kind of just their approach in a different way, or just trying to figure out how can I reach out to these people in a different way right now during this time to help me stand out, versus just going in someone's DM and sending them a link like, hey, listen to my stuff. Like, what would you recommend?
There are so many lives happening right now they're literally the top people in the game on the label side are on their Instagram 24/7. So first off, it goes back to education. You need to know who the power players are. So if you don't know who the power players are, get to know them and follow them, because all of them are doing these things. A gem that I have is somebody I work with, and he's like a brother to me. His name's Earl Johnson, and he's the senior VP of A&R over at Rock Nation. And he took a break this week, but all of last week and the week before, Monday through Friday, he was doing 3 hours a day of live video sessions with emerging artists. So he's tapping you in, you get to play a song or you get to sing a song. He gets to hear you, you know what I mean, and things like that. So these A&Rs are out here and they're looking. So know who they are, know who the major and indie labels are. And they're doing webinars. There was just a webinar, I think yesterday, about A&Rs. And even if you don't want to be an A&R, you're the artist, go in there and listen anyways and go through the chat, because people were sending links back and forth with beats and music and managers. So it's active right now. So definitely educate yourself on who the power players are, and see how, and everyone likes their music sent individually, you know what I mean? So each person has their own way of how they want to do it. Some people prefer email, some people prefer DMs. I personally prefer DMs because it goes right into my Apple Music, so I can just kind of, or SoundCloud, so I can just listen to it on my phone. But some people like to listen to it from their computer. But it's all on Instagram and online. So there's no reason why these artists shouldn't be able to, you know, do a little research, click in and figure out how to get their music heard right now.
So you said, and shout out to everybody saying we got good questions and good answers coming out. So for somebody, you said do research. So where do they start? If they want to find out, like, who's the top A&R person at, let's say, Meek Mill's new label, like, where do they go to find out?
Yeah. I would start with so every year Billboard does the Power 100, usually comes out in January. I'd start there. The Power 100 will give you at least the top 100 people in the game right now. And that's across the board, not just A&R, it's agents, managers, publishing. That's a good start. From there, you know, if you are looking for someone particular, like you said, like a Meek Mill, and you're trying to find out who his people are, I don't know an artist that doesn't appreciate their team. So if you dig a little bit within their Instagram, you're going to find them with a picture with their agent, with their managers, with their, you know, whoever. And then Google, you know, it's out there. The media's covered their managers. Their, you know, one of them that's always in the media is The Weeknd. His managers are always in the media doing comments and things like that. So, you know, between Google, Instagram, and like a billboard, I tune into Billboard. So if you're in the music space at all, if you're not looking at Billboard every day or Billboard Biz, that's a miss. That should be on your rotation of notifications every day, just to keep up on what's going on in the industry.
Okay. So what would you say, like, because you said you have a lot of relationships with top A&Rs at a lot of different labels, like, what are they looking for? Like, is there a theme that you're seeing? Is there a trend that you're seeing?
I don't think there is. I think that's almost the misconception, is that people think that, you know, because a hot new artist comes out, that's the new trend and everyone's going to do that. It's actually the opposite. Once it's broke, you know what I mean? It's the A&Rs are then looking for the next thing that's different from that. You know, they don't want to go up against the number one artist and put out the same type of artist, because that doesn't help them.
Right.
When I was listening to the webinar, and they had some amazing people like Erica Coulter and Sean Barron over at Motown, and Chelsea over at Capitol, they were all talking about how, and Serge at Capitol, they were talking about how they're looking for all different kinds of artists, but they want quality, not quantity. So it's super important. I don't know how many artists I've seen that, you know, their lyrics might be amazing, but because their sound quality was bad, they didn't align with good producers, you know, the recordings were horrible. You know, you got to respect your craft, you know, and I think that a lot of artists miss that. You know, they might have the talent, that raw talent, but they don't understand that the quality of how you present it to these A&Rs is important. It's like an interview. You know, you're not going to go into an interview in sweats with your hair tied up and no makeup on. You know, you're going to go in with your best to get the job. And the same goes with music.
So how do they show up as their best now that we're in this virtual space? Like, is it the word that they use, like the sentences that they use? Like, how do they show up as their best?
I mean, I think the music is the music, you know what I mean? That's not, you know, lyrically or anything like that. That's on who they are as an artist, you know, and we're looking for them to be them, you know? So I don't want you to sound like Demi Lovato. I don't want you to sound like, you know, Drake. You know, I want you to sound like you.
Right.
But I think coming as your best is going back to the more logistical part of it, the sound quality of how the music sounds. You know, if you're performing live for somebody on one of these lives, do a test live before you go on. Make sure that we can hear you.
Mhm.
Make sure that the music, because even with the thing with Earl, you know, people were saying in their comments, I'm ready, click me. And then you go on to them and they don't have their computer set up and their music is, you know, all over the place. And,
Right.
you know, it's, you don't want to waste these people's time either. You know,
Right.
it's a gift that they're giving you to do this and listen to you. So just come prepared.
Yeah, yeah. And it's such a great time right now to
Hmm.
have this access. Like this access, we're never gonna get ever again. Like in terms of
Yeah.
everyone being stuck and not
Yep.
being able to move and
Yeah.
actually looking in a more proactive way than ever before. So people need to
Hmm.
really like take advantage of that.
For sure.
So I want to move away from professional stuff and career stuff and really talk about, you know, you as a person. Why do you think that you've been able to reinvent yourself, been able to transition, been able to just pick up and go,
Yeah.
and been able to just really like shine in this space and build like real core relationships? Like, what is it about you? Like, what are the attributes in you that make you the amazing Alex that I have grown to love and adore? And actually,
I love you
you and
too.
I met through a mutual friend of ours,
Yes.
who he loves his Volts, and he's like, Victoria, you have to meet Alex. Alex is dope. She's gonna be in New York. And I remember where we met. We went to Del Frisco.
Oh yes, that's my spot.
Right? And the
Yes.
waitress like fell in love with us. She gave us like our drinks for free.
Yes. She was fire.
And like we immediately connected. And then when I went out to LA, we hung out in LA.
Yes.
You know, we got to party together, we got to exercise together.
Yes.
So I know what makes you you, but what do you think is special? What do you think is your kind of like your special sauce, your flavor?
I think for me, that's a good question. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but I mean, part of it definitely has to go to my mom. I was raised by a single mom, and then we ended up moving in with my grandma, who was also a single woman. So I've been around a lot of really strong single females that have that were just kind of a force to be reckoned with within their own fields.
Yeah.
So that started it. But then obviously when I moved to Vegas when I was in my early 20s, you know, then it's me on my own. And I think the biggest thing for me was just no matter what I've been through personally or career wise, the ups, the downs, I just kept going. And I think that's the biggest thing. And, you know, when things are crazy, you know, money's low or high, personal relationships are up and down, you got to keep going. You just have to, you know, and, you know, that doesn't mean you can't stop and, you know, put a plan together or think about things. Definitely do that as well, but don't stop. Because if you stop and give up, that's, you know, then everything really does fall apart. So for me, I just felt like if I kept moving and I kept going, that would help me, you know, wherever I need to go, and I would figure it out along the way. And you do, you know, it's like what I said with moving to a different city. You know, bills don't stop. You know, the rent still has to get paid. You know what I mean? So, you know, I can either sit there and cry about it, or I can get up and do something about it. And that's something I've taken with me in every aspect of my life. And, you know, it's something is important is to always do.
Somebody's calling me. I thought I turned off my notifications. Not cool. Not cool. But no, that makes complete sense. And I think, you know, even with artists or anybody who's trying to do something, I heard this line the other day and it just sticks in my head. And it was, given this time, and really is applicable to any time, is like, don't quit, pivot. Don't quit, pivot, which means if it's not working, don't quit, just pivot. Do something else. Figure out another way. Figure out a new approach, but don't quit. Because once you quit, it's over. That's it, you know? Which I think is a great segue into this final question that I ask all my guests on the show, which is, why are you a woman who roars?
Oh, I am a woman who roars because I hustle. I have to get it done. Honestly, it stresses me out when I don't get things done. And it goes back to, and I don't stop. Like I'm adamant about what I'm adamant about, and it's almost a stubbornness, I guess you would say, but it's a stubbornness that I've made work for my career, you know. And I think anybody that's interacted with me, works with me, knows that, you know, I might, like you said, I might have to stop and think about how I'm going to pivot, but I'm going to pivot, and you're going to see me back in some capacity. So that's the best thing I can think of in terms of that.
Yes, you're a woman who roars because you don't stop roaring. Okay?
Yeah, facts.
You're gonna hear me. You're gonna see me.
maybe that's the Latina side in us, but yes.
That's
you know,
our gift. That
girl, we don't
gift.
shut up. We gotta talk. We gotta keep going.
That is our adobo. You know, that is our
yes.
spice, honey.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're talking about. When they talk about our spice, it is that. We do not give up, and you will hear us.
Yeah, no matter what. Like, we might be going down, but you're gonna hear it's going down for sure.
Exactly. You're gonna hear that loud thump. Okay. Once you're gonna hear that. You're gonna hear that. Well, all right, Alex. Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
This was so cool.
Always. I'm so happy you enjoyed your time. I'm so happy to have you on the series. And shout out to everybody in the comments. You know, we have time for a question. Let's see if somebody is able to type in really
Let's do it.
easy and fast. Thank you, Fashion Guy New York. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Commenting. If you guys have a quick question for Alex, let's see if we can answer it real quick. Start typing away. Let's see if we can pick it up and make it happen. Oh, you know what? Actually, while we're waiting for somebody to ask a question, you interviewed somebody really dope yesterday on your live as well.
Yes.
Which I thought was like really interesting. So how did that interview go?
It went so good. Paul is a friend of mine. We were able to revisit the Khalif Browder story, which actually that's something I want to shout out. It's not something I necessarily advertise. But it's something I'm definitely want to start moving into more, is these wrongfully incarcerated people. And he worked with probably the prime case of that, which was the Khalif Browder story. Definitely watch it on Netflix. But he was the attorney that came in after he got out, and he is doing amazing justice work in New York City and in Jersey. So please follow him. It's PV Prestia. But it was great to talk with him and hear about the good that the judicial system came from after that story, but also that we have a lot more work to do when it comes to injustices in the country overall. Yeah.
So we got some questions here. So one from Fashion Guy New York is, what would you say is the one quality that stands out in an artist that can be an it factor?
Ooh. I don't know that there is one quality. I think the it factor is you have it or you don't. But you know what I mean? I can't teach, no one can teach talent. You know what I mean? You either have it or you don't, but you can perfect your talent and you can work on your craft. And I think that's probably my biggest advice, is to, you know, work with other artists, work with other producers, because you can go from raw to, you know, being the best if you put the work in.
Yeah. So Clevins 901 says, how are you taking care of your mental health during this pandemic?
Yeah, that's hard. I think a lot of people are struggling with that right now. I am trying to stay active from a physical standpoint. You know, I'm doing the same thing everyone else is with the mat and the weights and the jump rope, you know, trying to stay active.
I see you. Every time I see you, I'm like,
girl, I'm trying.
Alex,
I hate it. I won't lie. That's my least favorite workout, is doing something at home. I hate it. But it was either that or I, you know, sit at home and do nothing. So that is one standpoint. The other thing that I've been doing is honing in on my creative. You know, I come from a creative background. I love to draw and paint and, you know, things like that. So I've been doing that, you know, on the side to kind of release my brain from work and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. And also listening to music, right? Because now
yes, lots of music. And also interacting too. I think some people were a little bit afraid to do these things like this, you know, trying to do lives with people, but do it. Do a FaceTime, call your friends, you know, they're not gone. You can't see them in person right now.
Yes, definitely. All right, awesome. Well, thanks again for everyone tuning in. Thank you, Alex, for your time, for your insight.
No, thank you. This is so great.
For your insight. Thank you so much, guys. Stay tuned because we have a lot of series coming up under the Woman Who Roar genre. So stay tuned. Got another one at 6 o'clock tonight. Thank you so much, Alex. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Besitos. Gracias.
Bye. De nada.